When you think of director Kevin Smith, the last thing that comes to mind is horror. Usually it's classic comedies like Clerks, Dogma, and Chasing Amy, but in recent years Smith has been dabbling in other genres. The first being 2011's horror film, Red State, establishing him as a director you don't want to pigeonhole. In 2014, Smith released Tusk, a dark comedy horror film with a disturbing premise and bizarre imagery. The idea for the film came during the recording of an episode of SModcast, The Walrus and the Carpenter. In the episode, Smith with his longtime friend and producer, Scott Mosier, discussed an article featuring a prank ad where a homeowner was offering a living situation free of charge if the lodger agrees to dress as a walrus. Smith then told his Twitter followers to tweet #WalrusYes if they wanted to see this hypothetical turn into a film. A vast majority of Smith's following agreed that this film should be made, and it turned out great considering how absurd the plot was. Warning, spoilers follow, so don't say I didn't warn you. The story follows Wallace, played by Justin Long, a podcaster who makes fun of people who are the subject of viral videos. There's a video of a kid who accidentally chops his leg off with a samurai sword, the Kill Bill Kid. He and his buddy Teddy, played by Joel Osment, laugh and ridicule this kid, so right away Wallace is not a likable guy. Wallace flies up to Canada to interview and make fun of, in person, the Kill Bill Kid. Upon arriving, he finds out the kid killed himself, and Wallace is upset. Not because the kid died, but because he flew up there for nothing and has no show. While in a bar in Manitoba, Wallace stumbles upon an ad from a retired oceanic adventurer who is confined to a wheelchair. Howard, played by Michael Parks, is offering a room in his home for free in exchange for some work and a guarantee to hear interesting stories. So Wallace heads over and has a lengthy conversation with him. Howard tells the story of Mr. Tusk, a walrus who rescued him after a shipwreck. Things take a turn when Wallace passes out from something Howard put into his tea. Wallace wakes up the next morning to find his leg has been amputated. Howard explains how a brown recluse bit him and his leg needed to be amputated. Howard makes excuses for all of Wallace's questions. Why am I not at the hospital? Can I call for help? Where's the doctor? How did you call the doctor? When Wallace calls Howard out on another excuse, Howard gets irate and stands, showing that he's not the frail old man he seems to be. This is where Howard lays out his plans. He plans to fit Wallace in a perfectly constructed walrus costume in an attempt to recreate Mr. Tusk. He will need to make some modifications first. Later, Wallace is awoken by the sound of his cell phone. He makes his way to it, but instead of calling the cops because of, plot, he calls his girlfriend and leaves a voicemail. He does the same for Teddy, but Howard comes up from behind and knocks him unconscious. Howard begins to mutilate and transform Wallace's body, removing limbs, modifying bone placement. He sews Wallace in a walrus costume made of human skin, complete with tusk made from the bones of Wallace's severed legs. This movie changes tone multiple times. It bounces from comedy to thriller. Up to this point, the movie had a very misery feel. When the walrus is first revealed, you don't know if you should laugh or be disgusted. The costume is creepy and unsettling. This movie has now shifted into, well, the only way to describe it would be the Human Centipede meets Roger Corman. There are a lot of long, dialogue-heavy scenes in this movie, but when you have two great actors across from each other delivering those lines, you don't even realize how long the scene is. Kevin Smith has stated, I just wanted to showcase Michael Parks in a fucked up story where he could recite some Lewis Carroll and the Rhyme of the Ancient Mariner to some poor motherfucker sewn into a realistic walrus costume. When Howard is conditioning Wallace to be a walrus, he tries to make him swim. We see that Wallace isn't the first Mr. Tusk, and this wasn't a spur-of-the-moment idea. Now we definitely know Howard is completely insane. Howard reveals that right before being rescued, he had killed and eaten Mr. Tusk. Overcome with guilt, he has spent the last 15 years turning his victims into his beloved savior in an attempt to relive their last day and give Mr. Tusk another chance at survival. Howard then dresses in his own homemade suit, and the two become engaged in a fight that ends with Wallace impaling Howard on his tusk. Howard dies, but he is satisfied to have fulfilled his life's mission at last. Suspecting Wallace may be in trouble, Allie and Teddy fly to Canada. Now this is where the story kind of drops off. A local detective puts them in contact with an inspector, Guy Lapointe, played by Johnny Depp, who is working on a similar case. Lapointe has been hunting Howard. Lapointe reveals that Howard has been kidnapping and murdering people for years. He believes Wallace may still be alive, but not as they remember him. There's more that happens here, but it's so unentertaining, I'm not even going to waste your time with it. This is the first part of Smith's True North trilogy. In 2016, most of the side characters from Tusk returned for Yoga Hosers, the second part in his trilogy. The trilogy will conclude with Moose Jaws, which is, as I'm sure you've already guessed, Jaws with a moose. Now, not a lot of people will classify this as a WTF movie, but if you go into the movie like I originally did, only knowing it's Kevin Smith and a film called Tusk, you're going to get that WTF feeling. Overall, not one of Kevin Smith's best. Hell, it's not even his daughter Harley Quinn's best movie. It is entertaining though. Any scene with Michael Parks and Justin Long together is truly the best. And thank God that's most of the movie. Some of the best acting comes at the end when Long is in the walrus suit and he can only portray emotion with his eyes. So if you're in the mood for body transformative horror but not quite ready to make the leap to the human centipede, Tusk is an entertaining alternative. Check it out.